Hi, this is Kevin with WordVice. Thanks for joining us today as we talk about the University of California's personal insight questions and give you some tips on how best to answer these questions. So like all top-tier universities, the UC offers its own admissions criteria in addition to the Common Application essay, and this takes the form of the personal insight questions. As you can probably guess by the name, the purpose of the personal insight questions is to give the admissions committee some information about you. So for the 2017-2018 school year, there are some differences between the transfer students and the incoming freshmen. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to tell you about the requirements for incoming freshmen. If you need more information, visit their website and they'll give you all of the details there. So here are the basic requirements for these responses. There's one question every applicant must answer. In addition, there are 3 questions out of 7 additional questions that every applicant must answer. So in total, you have to choose 4 questions. So just like the Common Application essay, you are able to choose amongst a wide array of questions that will best define you. Now the maximum length for each response is only 350 words. What does this mean? It means you have to be as concise and to the point as possible in your answers. You should be aware that every question is given equal consideration, so there's no responses that are more important than the others. You should therefore choose the response that best captures you and your personality. Got the basics? Okay, now let's get down to some tips that you can apply when writing these responses, regardless of which response you write to. So keep in mind, we're not going to read every response today in this video. We want to look at this holistically, and hopefully this will give you an idea of how to proceed when brainstorming, drafting, and revising these responses. Tip number 1. Show, don't tell. Now this is our first tip because it definitely applies to all essay writing and especially to admissions writing. Imagine you have to read 100 essays a day or 1,000 essays within the period of a week. Do you want to read essays that list fact about the student? Or would you rather read a story that has action, detail, sensory details? The latter is definitely what you want to go for, not only to capture your emotional state and the details of your situation, but also to make you stand out more to these admissions committee experts who are going to be reading so many essays, so they want to enjoy an essay, and that's the one that's going to stick in their mind. Now, how can you achieve this goal of showing and not telling? Well, first, you can write in the active voice, not the passive. The active voice will put the reader in your position because you are the one doing the things in your essay. You also can provide a lot of scene and setting details so that readers can experience what it was like when you were in that situation. So for example, if you are talking about a learning disability that you had in school, the way to tell that, not show it, the way to just tell about it would be to say, when I was in school, there was a learning disability that I had, and it prevented me from achieving everything I wanted. But I still was able to be in honor society, I achieved high grades, and my teachers loved me. Well, that's interesting, but a better way to show this would be to give examples of what happened with your learning disability. You might name the disability first, right off. So if you have dyslexia, this is just an example, of course, you might say, I have struggled with dyslexia throughout my young life into my adult life, and this has produced challenges in myriad ways. I remember walking into Miss Radcliffe's English class in the 7th grade and being asked to read what was on the board. I couldn't do it. I felt the cold sweat drip down my back, and the other kids stare at me. I wanted to turn and cry, but instead, I faced the board and ... Already you have your reader hooked on what you want to write about, so this is a good way to show these details and emotional sensory details. Tip number 2, turn your essay into pillars. If you think about a coliseum, it is composed of at least 4 pillars, right? One on each corner. If you think about your essay in the same way, you want to have your pillars of your roof be strong but in different positions. You don't have one pillar only in the middle, one column in the middle of your roof. So in order to do that, you want to have different perspectives for each essay that you write. So if you choose 4 essays, you don't want to tell about the same experience. By having 4 completely different experiences or parts of your past that you talk about, parts of your personality, this will give a more well-rounded, Colosseum-like view and aspect to your essays. Tip number 3, brainstorm by answering a question. Now, you might think about starting by approaching question number 8 first. And question 8 essentially asks you to write about what sets you apart. Now, this question is very open-ended. What sets you apart? What makes you different than other people? It's open-ended by design because it allows you to put in your ideas that you might not want to in a more specific essay. So it really allows you to do what the Common application is allowing you to do. Now, by doing this essay first, it will actually act as a brainstorming exercise by writing about how you're different. So maybe start by making a list about how you are different than other people. That's a really good way to start brainstorming. And the more that you write about your differences, the more that you write about how you're special, the more that you can have extra ideas that you might use for these additional pillar essays, and even for the Common application or coalition essays, which you do have to write anyways in addition to these personal insight questions. Tip number 4, brainstorm before reading each prompt. This could sound crazy or obvious depending on whom you ask and what type of organizational skills you have. The most common way that people will approach these essays is to read through them one at a time. Think about it. And then when they read essay number 3 that asks for a meaningful experience, for instance, people will try to conjure up their meaningful experiences. Instead, if you just think about what makes you special, similar to how we have approached essay number 8, you've already gathered this host of ideas. Now, once you've brainstormed the ways that you are special, like let's not only say special, what you've done that's important in your past, what kind of person you are, what you're aiming to achieve, what drives you in life. So these categories of goals, by making a list of each category, when you finally look down at the personal insight questions, it's going to be a lot easier for you to see which question you can respond to based upon the brainstorming that you've already done. So I recommend, if you have good memory, good imagination, and you know yourself, write these things about yourself first, and then later on you can really get a bigger picture and see where your personality and experiences and passions fit into these questions. Tip number 5, vary your tone. Not V-E-R-Y, V-A-R-Y. Make your tone different from one essay to the next. For instance, in one essay, you might write about an experience, something about you that is very humorous and very light. You might talk about your love of cats and some hijinks that happen. Something that captures a lighter side of you, so that shows that part of your personality. In another essay, you could talk about a struggle, something dark and intense that has really challenged you. And yet in a third essay, something sad that's maybe pushed you to the brink, and it shows that you have perseverance. In a fourth essay, something that captures another part of your personality, or just is set in a slightly, maybe more objective tone. So by varying these moods, these tones, these voices, it's similar to these different perspectives of the content of your essays. You're giving the admissions committees a break from reading dry facts and monotonous ways of writing. They don't want to read an essay that is written in 4 essays that are written in the exact same way. So by varying your tone, you're making it much more interesting for them, and they're more likely to like the personality that you're showing them. And the last tip, tip number 6, learn what to do, of course, and learn what not to do. So already in this video, we've given you 5 tips on what to do. And this is, of course, the holistic. As we said, these are general suggestions for approaching these essays. What you really want is all of the details for what you should do. You don't want to miss any details. So we've mentioned the word count and what's the general purpose of the essay, but it certainly does not hurt you to go to the University of California's website and to see exactly what they want you to do. They give writing tips and PDF writing worksheets, and the questions are there, and there's even a little bit of samples, and you can find this on UC website and on a lot of other websites of people who've written these before and who have gotten into the UC schools. And I should definitely mention, when I've talked about what not to do, when you go to the UC website's writing tips, there's a section on common admissions writing mistakes, avoiding common mistakes. By reading through this list, you can treat it like a checklist. So when you revise your essay or when you're drafting, you can say, oh, I've done that, I don't want to do that. Because if you can avoid the mistakes that others have made before you, then you're already giving yourself another leg up in the process. And the admissions committees are therefore going to probably be less likely to, throw your essay in the trash because you've done something wrong. So it's a really good idea to find out what not to do and then use that during the editing and revising process. Also, be sure to give yourself plenty of time to draft the essay, to brainstorm, to revise, and to edit. You want to be able to do this at your own pace. A week is not enough, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, depending on how much time you have to draft and show your peers or perhaps a professor and really get these ideas honed to a sharp point. For additional resources regarding the college admissions process, please feel free to visit our resources page and our college admissions editing page. You can find that at wordvice.com. Thanks and happy writing.